Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Creative Entrepreneur interview series. We just keep chugging along, cranking these things out. This is going to be a good one. I believe that this is the first time that I've maybe ever interviewed someone who has been on both Oprah and the Today Show and countless other media outlets. My guest is Will Bowen. Among other things, he's the author of A Complaint-Free World, is one of his books. Another one, more recent one, is called Happy This Year. He's obviously an author. He's a public speaker, travels internationally, and he also runs a spiritual center in Kansas City called InVision. Very inspiring, often philosophical interview that I know you're going to enjoy. But before we get to that, well, I got to ask, are you on the Creative Entrepreneur VIP list? If you said yes, good move. You're a smart person. If you said no, I just got to ask, well, why not? Maybe you got distracted. Maybe you never took me up on this offer. It's free. It's really easy. And you get a big free sample of my new book called The DIY Career Manifesto. You'll get emails every time I post a new interview so you don't miss any of them. And I'll also keep you posted on upcoming creative entrepreneur type events and online courses and things that I offer as the months progress ahead. All you need to do is go to DIYcareermanifesto.com. That is DIYcareermanifesto.com, and find a link there that says Creative Entrepreneur VIP list and sign up. It's real simple. It's real easy, and you're set. Come on, just do it right now while you're thinking about it. Come on. All right. On to that interview with Will Bowen. I know you're going to love this one. Enjoy. Welcome to the Creative Entrepreneur. Bob Baker here, and I have got an amazing person for you this week. I mean, everybody is amazing in their own right, but this guy is a special sort of amazing, and I'm talking about Will Bowen. He's live with me right now from Kansas City. Hi, Will. How are you?
Great, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm really looking forward to sharing your story with my viewers and listeners because, admittedly, a disclaimer here, you and I know each other. We've known each other for like about a year and a half, and you came to, we initially met, I don't mind saying, because my girlfriend Pookie and I, we run this choir. It's called Gateway to Agape Choir. We've been doing that over 5 years, and we initially met when the choir was invited to do a road trip from our home in St. Louis to perform at your church, which is called InVision in Kansas City. And that was like, October, I don't know, it was like a year and a half ago. I think, and I learned a lot about you on that first trip, that you're an author, that you'd been on Oprah and the Today Show and all this amazing stuff. And so,
and now the Bob Baker Show.
And now the Creative Entrepreneur.
I have arrived.
I think this is really the highlight. I think, Oprah and Matt Lauer, they were just stepping stones to building up to this moment. So I'm happy to be serving that purpose for you, Will.
Okay.
But let's give people who might not know your full story just a little bit, because it's an amazing one. And I don't know where you want to start, but I'm assuming you were prior to running your own sort of spiritual center. You were a Unity minister, or an ordained minister in the Unity Church system.
Yeah, and from an entrepreneur standpoint, I mean, I feel like I've always been an entrepreneur. The reason I say that is my first job was selling advertising for a radio station because I had been in radio. I loved radio. I was an announcer, but I looked around and I noticed that the announcers drove beat up vans and the salespeople drove, brand new Thunderbirds. And
that's right. So you came from the business world, media, sales, even prior to
sales,
going into the becoming I don't know if you call that a man of the cloth or whatever.
Well,
spiritual.
I think everybody is on a spiritual path. I just get paid for it, is how I like to say it. But, and then I actually started a small gift business when I was in my late 20s, selling inspirational things and all of that. And it did pretty well. And then I went back into radio. But what I was going to say about radio and radio sales is that when you're selling for someone else, you've got to be an entrepreneur. You've got to drive your own business. You've got to be responsible for your own business. And so I really feel like I've always kind of worked for myself. And then, as you say, when I was in my 30s, I felt a calling to go into ministerial school, at that time, Unity School. And I Wasn't sure why, but that wouldn't go away. And then I did that. And what was interesting was, as a result of doing that, all these dreams that I'd had my whole life of writing, I'd always wanted to be a writer, professional speaking, which just seemed outside of my realm. And now I've gone full circle and have my own radio show at willbowenradio.com. So it just, that's sort of my evolution. And as you say, yes, I gave out these complaint-free bracelets in 2006.
Right, that was part of a kind of a thing. I think Edwin Gaines, who has a book
Yes.
out called four something about prosperity.
Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. I cannot recommend that book high enough. Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, yeah. And in it, she recommends people go 21 consecutive days without complaining. Now, what I added to the mix was I said, let's put a bracelet on our wrist, not as a way of showing people we're doing this, but every time we complain, we take the bracelet off, we move it to the other wrist until we go 21 consecutive days without complaining, so that becoming complaint-free is then a habit.
Right, and so it's like a physical reminder, because somebody can just tell themselves that, but it's only in their head. When you have that physical reminder, I guess it's more effective in trying to stay with that habit, right?
Absolutely.
That was
Yeah.
the idea. And so and I had seen these wristbands and heard of them for a couple of years prior to meeting you, and had no idea until we met that you sort of started that aspect of it. But a lot of interesting things happened as a result of you coming up with this idea, and I guess you gave them out at the church or whatever. Just give me a little quick synopsis. I know it's an amazing story, but what happened? Yeah, that came out of that.
We gave them out at the church, and instantly I knew that there was something special going on. And I had done a lot of little giveaway Sundays to help people remember things that we were talking about. And when I did this, I mean, we ordered 500 of these little rubber. These weren't the exact bracelets. We ordered them from a toy company. And we ordered 500, gave away 250, and by the end of the service, people were clamoring for them. They wanted them for their real estate office, their Girl Scout troop, their this, their that. And we just started buying them and giving them away. And we were giving them away at that point, asking people to just make donations. And that was actually based on Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity's idea. He started this very successful restaurant in the 1900s here in Kansas City. It was all based on a love offering. You come in and eat, and then you give. Well, we were doing that with bracelets. The thing is, people wouldn't go into the restaurant and eat 100 meals, but we were getting people ordering 5,000, 10,000 bracelets.
Right.
And so all of a sudden it just took off. The local newspaper heard about it, which got picked up by McClatchy News Service, People Magazine, Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, and then, as you say, and then came Oprah, and that changed everything. I mean, we went from probably an average request rate of 10,000 bracelets a week to we had 2 million requests after the Oprah Winfrey Show in 24 hours. Wow. And that you talk about an entrepreneur thing, that crushed us. That almost crippled us because it was so successful. And we had said we would give these bracelets away. We hadn't figured out at this, and we were asking for donations. We hadn't figured out at this point that there would be some people who would, for lack of a better word, abuse the system and just take. I actually had one guy say he wanted 10,000 bracelets. And so I just called him. And he said, I really didn't want them. I just wanted to see if you were stupid enough to send them.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So we had 2.6 million bracelets in the church basement, and we didn't have the money to send them out. We had the bracelets, but didn't have the money. And so we had to switch our entire way of being. And that was a very frightening thing to do. We had to go from a system of giving the bracelets away to a system of asking people to give when they got them. And it was difficult because a lot of people thought, oh, this is a scam, et cetera, et cetera. But we were just very honest and upfront. And within 30 days, the whole situation turned around. We got the bracelets out. So
awesome. You know, there's a lot of people that whatever they're aspiring to do, they always they want that big break and that big, boy, if I could only. Sometimes it's Oprah for authors, but it might be something. If only this big blog would cover me, then all my worries would be over. But really, when you succeed too quickly, there's actually, there's something to be said for organic, slow growth versus this boost suddenly into the stratosphere, because all sorts of problems come along with it, right? So.
Well, yes, and you mentioned Edwin Gaines. She is I call her my prosperity mentor. In fact, I'll be talking to her today. I talk to her once a month, and we just talk. And Edwin says that she noticed in her own life that had she had the big financial success she knew she would someday have too early, she might have actually backed down and not given as much. In other words, it is that call to earn that often causes us to produce, which is a good thing. It's a divine thing.
Right, especially with the striving for something. Yeah, when you have to work for it. Is actually a good thing, and it develops who you become in that process is all a part of it too. And so you were on Oprah, you were on the Today Show, and all those other many other media outlets. Those are probably two of the more higher profile ones. But this then led to publishers going, "Hey, this guy's onto something," and that led to I know you've got a number of books out, and all of them are traditionally published by big name publishers. So kudos to you for going that route. But the first book was totally based on the bracelet, which is called a Complaint-Free World,
right.
Which did really well. And then you've since had a number of books out. What's your bibliography or whatever? The Complaint-Free World is the first one, right?
Complaint-Free World was the first one, which was the biggest selling book in all of China in 2009, and it's continued to do very, very well in this country. I wrote Complaint-Free Relationships, which is an international bestseller as well. And then I redid A Complaint-Free World because it was so successful. We wanted to do a revised and expanded version of that. Then I wrote the book Happy This Year because to me, the number one comment people gave me who did the Complaint-Free program was after going 21 days without complaining, they felt happier. And I thought, isn't that interesting? There's something to that. So I began to study, and happiness became my pure focus. And then after that, of course, I wrote Happy Stories. And then later this year, Convergent Press will be bringing out my book, To You Love God, which is a daily devotional as if God were speaking to you every day.
That's amazing.
So that's it. 6 books in 6 years, 7 years.
Wow, that's a pretty good clip. And I know the whole China thing was very surprising to you. Like it kind of surprised you when you found out you were popular in China. I think you actually visited there and people were recognizing you, and you're like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, I had no idea because of the way the reporting happens. Typically, with larger publishers, is the publisher in China sells books. They got 6 months to report to the sub agent, who's got 6 months to report to the agent, who then catches you up at the next cycle. It can be 2 years. So we had no idea how well the book was doing in China. And I walked out into the airport and people just started recognizing. And I thought they thought that I was Wayne Dyer because of the bald head and everything like that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I noticed Wayne Dyer is now wearing a mala T-shirts and a Kango hat backwards. So there's my earring, I guess, is the best way to tell us apart.
Right, so you can no longer be if you're confused with him. One quick question about the happiness topic, and then we'll get into the normal list of questions that I like to ask every guest. But I had heard some years ago, and I think I've even anecdotally had conversations with people from other countries, heard that this sort of positive thinking, happiness, even personal development or whatever is a very other countries view it as a very American thing.
Yes.
Whereas, and I don't know if it was more European countries or whatever, felt more like, that struggle and, good and bad was all a part of life. And this obsession with happiness was, like just some American idealistic thing. What has been your experience since your book is international? I guess different of how that topic is received globally. Obviously, it's well received in China, apparently, from their culture. But have you noticed differences in that regard?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I do think that foreign countries see that happiness is very much an American ideal. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I also think that that's one of the reasons that my books and other books like that are doing so well in China. China is a communist dictatorship that is trying to work symbiotically with a capitalist economy in China. And so whereas in the past, the ideal, you may not know this, but in China, they have no concept of superheroes.
Oh, wow. No comic books, huh?
No, well, they have comic books, but they're based on the winning of everyone working together. It's very Confucianistic. Okay. Here in this culture, it's very individualistic. In China, they say that the nail that stands out gets hammered down. Whereas here in the United States, we're all about the rugged individualist, the superhero. And so now you've got China, which is attempting to cultivate from avoid these superheroes, these people who are going to shine and move their economy, their versions of Google and Bill Gates and Stephen Jobs. And so they're trying to cultivate this forward. And happiness it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the highest pinnacle. And so Americans have really kind of reached around and we're like, you know what? Alligator shoes aren't going to make me any happier than this, than shoes from Walmart. This isn't going to, what really does make me happy? And so America is starting to look at this. In 2005, there were 4,000 books published on happiness.
Wow.
And in America alone, 259 million times a year, people Google the word happiness. So I see China is following in because this is what America's doing. And really, in some ways, China goes, if America's doing it, let's at least try it. Right. And the other thing is that you're right. There is a sort of a blasé attitude of the Brits, which is interesting because my book, Happy This Year, I mean, it's not a #1 bestseller, but it's actually doing well in the United Kingdom, which is somewhat surprising because they don't tend to be as focused, and they tend to disregard self-improvement in Europe and do write it off as an American thing, which is interesting because most trends begin in the United States and go back there anyway.
Right. It's just like they start on the coast here and finally get to the Midwest where we are.
Hey, you know what? By the time they get to us, Bob, all the bugs have been worked out.
That's right. Sure. We may be the late adopters, but but you and I, of course, are cutting edge. We are,
exactly.
We're paying attention. But awesome. I knew this is an incredible story that you got here. So I want to shift now into the official list of questions and pull out a few more nuggets from you and what makes you tick and all that good stuff. So, yeah, one I always like to start off with is if you could identify 3 key factors that led to all these amazing things that you've done, the speaking and the authorship and the spirituality and all that stuff, what would those 3 key factors be?
Number 1, I would say know where you're going. Know where you're going. Right, you can't see it, but off camera here, I have a electronic picture frame, and I also have the same electronic picture frame on my dresser in my bedroom, and on it are images of things I wish to do, ideas I wish to have manifest. It's my vision board.
You say it's like an electronic vision board.
It's an electronic vision board, and what I've discovered is, so that would be number 1, knowing where you're going. And then number 2 would be blur the lines between where you are and where you're going. Because in some way that already exists as a vibrational match. For me, for example, right now, I just saw one of my goals go by, but now I see a picture of my fiance and myself in Jamaica, which was on a trip we went recently. Well, I have the future, which is a reality, in my opinion, and the past or something that was very celebratory, which is also a reality, in my opinion. So by looking at them this way, I've discovered that it sort of can, have I actually been to Australia, which is one of my places I want to go. I've never been to Australia. Have I ever been there? I start to feel like I've already been there when I see it alongside a picture of San Francisco, which was on my dream frame for a year, and now I've done. So know where you're going, blur the lines, and you only fail when you give up. I mean, you can be down and out behind. In fact, I truly believe that one of the steps to manifestation, and I feel like I've isolated 10 of them for myself, which I'm working on as a book, but one of them is a place where you get to where you're almost certain it's not going to happen. And you're okay with that. And it's that giving up and detachment which has to happen. And when you're okay with it, and you don't feel cheated or slighted or whatever, you're just, I'm okay with it. Then all of a sudden, whoosh, it just happens.
That's funny because a recent interview that I did was a guy named Jack Conte, plays in a musical duo called Pomplamoose. They're very successful on YouTube, and he had a very contrarian view of where he almost whenever he starts something new, he almost has this pessimistic, he almost assumes it's going to fail but he sort of like doesn't care. I guess he still just plunges forward anyway, and then he goes, "Oh, this did work out," which to me doesn't quite work for me. I like to sort of have a sense of expectation and excitement about it, visualize how it's going to work out. But it sounds like you're sort of walking that line a little bit to becoming comfortable with doing stuff and knowing it could fail, and it's okay if it does, but it may just work out beyond your wildest expectations. Is that kind of the philosophy?
Well, yeah, definitely. And what I think about is somebody asked me what were some of my greatest failures, and I wasn't being flippant. I haven't had any failures. I've had things that haven't manifested in the way that they were going to. But I always think of Stephen Jobs and the Newton. I mean, that was a huge bomb,
right,
which became the iPad.
Right.
When society was ready and when the technology had gotten more advanced, it was ready. He was just ahead of his time. So who knows? Maybe sometimes we're just ahead of our time. I can't think of something that has happened in the past that hasn't ultimately led me to a better place,
right,
of where I am. So why not enjoy those things as they transpire?
Right. And that's interesting about the blur the lines between like where you currently are, I guess, and where you want to be. That was an interesting take on that. I know the way that I've described it to people is I think, because some people I think either live in one of two worlds. Some people live too much in the visioning, in the airy-fairy. Michael Beckwith, I know, refers to that as they just totally live in the vision of it without sort of being aware of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that what it causes them to do is just think about stuff and not take the action necessary to get there. And then there are other people that just totally live in the here and now, and they kind of wallow in what's wrong, and they don't really have that vision. To me, or what's worked for me is having a balance between both. Knowing where I want to go, like you said, know where you're going, but realizing where I am, realizing the disparity between those 2 points, and then you use that tension to sort of take action to close the gap between those two things. That sounds like that's the way I describe it. I think, but when you meant blur the lines, I think you had a different meaning to it. You're like saying that already exists.
No, what I meant was blurring the lines to the extent that it's a present reality. For example, the house where I'm sitting right now, I wish I could spin around and show you, and I apologize for not continuing to look in the camera, but we manifested this gorgeous house. I'm looking out on Lake Wacomas here. There's a bald eagle that has been nesting in a tree right above my office. There was a long period of time where it looked like we were not going to get this house. We found this house. Somebody else had a contract on this house. And so what we did was, I don't have one with me, but we had coffee mugs made up with us standing in front of this house that we drank out of every morning. And we snuck over here while people still owned this house, had our picture taken in front of it, blew it up into a poster and put it over our bed. So it was the first thing we saw in the morning and the last thing we saw at night. And we visualized ourselves being in there. We decorated the house in our mind. And just as I said before, there came a period of time where there was no way we were going to get this house. The other people had a closing date. Everything was set. We released that feeling, and then their thing fell apart. We got the house. And it works. It works with everything. The thing is, when you get to that, well, they've got a closing date, that's when most people give up. And that's when you're really showing your faith, is when it seems like it's not going to happen. And that's true in business too.
So it's like act as if, have to get the feeling that the thing has actually happened, and then things start miraculously happening to make that come to fruition. Yeah.
Well, and one of my pet peeves is I don't believe in this fake it till you make it thing, because the moment I decide I'm going to drink more water. Well, I'm faking it by drinking water. No, I've decided to drink more water.
So
I drink more water, therefore I am now drinking more water. You're not faking anything. You're actually beginning to vibrate at the energy level where that is a reality.
That's cool.
That's
awesome. Okay, Will, this has been great. So I'm going to continue on my list of questions. This is a little interesting. It's I don't know if you ever saw that newer Star Trek movie where there was the old Spock and the young Spock, and they actually met. So this is like, I always think of that scene in that movie when I ask this question. But if you could go back in time and have a talk with your younger self, with young Will, and you were to give 3 pieces of advice, we'll take them one at a time. But they are, what would you recommend that you do exactly exactly the same because it worked for you? What would you completely avoid? Number two, because you didn't have the wisdom to know, that it was a time waster at the time. And then what was something good that you, if you had known, that you could have added into the mix earlier? So we'll just take those one by one. What would you do exactly the same because it worked for you?
It's funny you asked this question because I do this, but I do the opposite of this frequently. Part of my visualization is to sit, and I'm 54. Part of my visualization, sometimes when I'm going to bed or waking up, or if I wake up in the middle of the night, is to have a conversation with myself at 74.
Wow.
And so I let that person give me advice. And I, as you've been asking the question, Bob, I think I would give the exact same advice to myself at 34 or 24 that my 74-year-old self often gives my 54-year-old self. And that is enjoy. Mm-hmm. It's all going to be okay. In fact, it all is okay. Everything that seems disheartening or challenging or difficult is ultimately going to contribute to your growth or to your prosperity or both. Mm-hmm. And so just relax.
Enjoy the journey.
Truly enjoy. Colette, the great French writer, said, "I had a wonderful life if I had but realized it at the time."
Right.
And we have this thing, which is it's a killer for happiness. It's called hedonic adaptation. Human beings have it to everything sensorial. In other words, if you see a sunrise and you get up one morning, it's gorgeous. If you saw the same sunrise every day, you would get to where you adapted to it. It wasn't as beautiful. And so it would be to look around and to appreciate and to savor everything, because everything changes. Everything is transient. And the other thing is just relax and stay where you feel you're supposed to be at that time. In other words, know where you want to go, but at the same time, I was supposed to be in radio sales for years. I was a radio station production director briefly when I was 19. And now I'm producing my own radio show. So everything is a dab of paint to the masterpiece that is your life. And if you can look back on it and go, that looks pretty good, that's all that matters. And the way to look back on it and think it looks pretty good is to think everything looks good as you're going through it as much as possible.
Cool. So if I were to paraphrase what you said, would it be
good luck with that?
Yeah, know where you want to go. Be clear. You have a vision about where you want to go, but also be happy with where you are in the meantime.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to say that?
Yeah, because as Gertrude Stein said, when you get there, there's no there. Because just as, if I was 28 and looked at myself now at 54, I would say, wow, I am so successful, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm thinking, I have these other things I want to do. I have these other there's always that driving force, which you talked about before. And as long as we allow it to encourage us, not to drive us as if we're deficient, we're successful.
Oh, cool. I love these nuances here. This is one of the more philosophical interviews that I've done, and I just love it. So if you were, and I love the juxtaposition of basically getting advice from your older self, which is like the opposite, but it's just equally valuable. Is there anything that,
By the way, my older self looks really good.
Amazing.
Very fit, very handsome.
Awesome. So would there be anything that you would avoid, or was there anything that you, as you look back, that you were misguided and went down a path that now, you have the wisdom to know, was it maybe egoic type of things or pursuing fame instead of something else,
No, actually, it would sort of be the opposite of what I just said. And that is, if I was to avoid anything, it would have been to have learned to avoid pain at an earlier age. What I mean by that is my family thrived on chaos, on pain. Communication was about, mom's not doing well, or my brother's upset, or this brother might have this problem, or whatever. It's always, Mm-hmm. And so my circle of friends became people who were always frenzied and concerned. And I don't have time for people like that now. I really don't. Life is truly, a half empty or half full, and I choose to look at it as overflowing, and that's what I would encourage myself to do. And so, to that end, you asked me what I would do. I would say stop complaining. I would have told myself 30 years ago. Just stop
And we
complaining.
come full circle to a complete free world. But there are people that thrive on pain, or they thrive on, or we hear the term drama queens or whatever, and that's part of their existence. I guess that's what gives them the juice of life, gets their adrenaline going. But there are other ways to enjoy the richness of life without having to be under stress and pain.
Well,
Yeah.
I truly believe that we only know that we're alive through sensorially experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that we can sensorially experience it as beautiful, or we can sensorially experience it as threatening and chaotic. Either way, whichever direction we're going to go is going to feed on itself, because what we choose to see is what we will notice more of. For example, if I was given the task to count everything that was red throughout the day, I would see a lot more red than I normally do. And so, because if you choose to see the world as dangerous and chaotic and threatening, it will show up that way for you, and it will justify your feeling. So I think people really get trapped, and then they don't know how to get out of it. And it's a bit of a struggle. That's why I wrote the book Happy This Year. I'm not trying to plug my book, but my book Happy This Year was a manual. In fact, the Dale Carnegie Institute in Asia is using it as a textbook to teach people how to get from that negative, unhappy perspective to the happiness that we all can share.
That's wonderful. And then finally, into that, is there anything good that you would have, whether it's advice to yourself or other people, to add into the mix earlier? I mean, we probably already touched on some of these things, but I'll go ahead and ask the question anyway. Advice to your younger self: good stuff that you didn't realize was good that you wish you would have done earlier.
Just appreciate and have fun where you are. Just appreciate and have fun where you are. There's so many times when I've thought, if I could wave a magic wand, my daughter's turning 18. If I could wave a magic wand and go back when she was 4 and have a tea party with her, how great would that be? Well, you know what? I had that chance. Now she's 18, so I get to sit and have a cup of coffee and talk to her about college and the boys she's dating and all that. That's going to shift. So just to appreciate where you are.
Cool. Let's see here. Another question. I know you're an author, and obviously, and I assume you're a voracious reader, as I am. And so if you had to identify one book or two books or whatever that changed your life, what would that be?
If you'd asked me that question at the beginning, you would have understood all my answers up till now, I think. Two, actually. One, I don't even know if it's in print anymore, and that is The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By Thaddeus Golas.
Wow. I don't know if I've even heard of that one.
Somebody gave me a Xerox copy, and I have dog-eared it to death. And then briefly, I think before he died, or his family allowed someone else to publish it, and I bought up a dozen or so copies. So the Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, I'm sure you can find it. The other one is, believe it or not, Illusions by Richard Bach. I just got an email from him yesterday. I'm asking if I can interview him for my show. When people say, what is metaphysics? I say, read Illusions by Richard Bach. The subtitle is The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And the first 15 pages will just keep you thinking and talking for months. It's a wonderful book. And it's just like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which he also wrote, which is you can read it in an hour and a half.
Wow, cool. If you had to get a nugget from The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, what would a little nugget of that you got from that book that was particularly inspirational?
What is it that I need to love now? Whenever you're feeling discord, unhappiness, dissatisfaction, what is it that I need to love now, or what am I not loving right now? Because the word love means to accept and to appreciate. Mm-hmm. And so, what is it I am not accepting and appreciating right now? And that's really the key out of all pain, misery, and suffering. And it ain't easy.
All right, Will, we are in the stretch here, and I got the 3 official questions left, but I wanted to, we just talked a little bit before I hit record about asking you one just off the cuff here about people in creative fields. Now, you are, even though maybe you're not an artist per se, but you're a writer. That's definitely a creative field. To be a speaker, there's a lot of creativity and sales and all the entrepreneurial things that you've done. But if you had some specific advice for people in more arts related, music related, or whatever fields, what advice would you have?
I would say that the thing that's really interesting to me is that people who are drawn to the arts, be it writing or music, tend to be very sensitive people. We would agree with that, right?
Yes, yes.
Sensitive people, okay? So then you find yourself in a career field that is measured by critics. It's really ironic that we as it's like one time I actually went and read the reviews on my books and one of my books, and it was very, very high. But there was 8 or 9 that were negative out of the few hundred, and the negative ones are the ones that I noticed. We just have to remember why we do it. We do it for the beauty of the expression. I get anxious. I've got to do some writing today, and I'm nervous about it because I don't know what's going to. And every time it comes, and there's something about that goes, I don't know where to plug in, but somehow I'm going to plug in, and I do. That's just really cool. But to also understand that there are people who will never put a dab of paint on a painting or try and do a sculpture or anything who see their place as telling you whether or not your stuff is good or not. Right. You know what you put into it, you know what you have, and you know what you've done before. You're the one who decides whether it's good or not, and that's what matters.
That's one of the reasons that over the years, my main advice to musicians, but really creatives of all types, is to focus on what I call fans, but they're basically the end user, the people will consume what you create, whether that's art or a book or a piece of music or whatever. So I've never been out to impress the critics or anyone in the industry or retail store people or whatever, but I am out to satisfy and pay attention to what people who are my end user, are my fans, like and enjoy. And even some of them will come at you with, with not liking something. So you have to develop a little bit of a resistance to that. But focus on the people who truly resonate with what you're creating. That's really the main value that you deliver, not worrying about the critics.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So this is like a big picture question. Even though we've covered a lot of deep philosophical things in this interview, but if you were to identify what truly motivates you, I mean, you do so many things, Will. You have a congregation there with your spiritual center in Kansas City. You've got books that are have many thousands or millions or whatever of readers around the world. You speak to companies and organizations. So is there like a bottom line motivation that kind of ties everything together? What motivates you to do what you do?
Watching a light come on. I did a lot of soul searching as to why I'm here. If you look at something, what is this? Well, if you didn't know what this was, you would say to yourself, what's it for? What was it designed for? Mm-hmm. Somebody may be using it for something other than what it's designed for, but its design is to cut paper. And so I thought a lot about, what was I designed for? What was I here for? And I'm a catalyst. That's truly what I see myself as, that I'm a catalyst for positive transformation. Through my writing, through my speaking, through my radio show, it's to provide a spark where in the past someone may not have seen the spark, or the spark, they weren't ready for the spark. And then the spark happens, and then they begin to ignite and they begin to grow. And I see this with schools, with companies. I'm getting ready to go to a school, and we're going to paint their faculty lounge purple. We're going to paint the entire faculty lounge purple, and the entire school is going to take on the complaint-free challenge. And I know the impact this is going to have on people's lives. And so I'm always thinking about that, I guess, wow, that the other person's going to get, and in the form of an epiphany.
That's awesome. Yeah, same thing here. I like to inspire people and have them. The greatest compliment that someone can pay me as an author is not, I learned a lot about music marketing or whatever. It's like, you caused me to think differently. I'm like inspired. I'd like to have a whole different attitude about my career, or and it empowers them to get out and share their gifts and their talents with the world. It's not, So the goal isn't to sell so many books; it's to reach people. That's why I say this. Basically, my new sort of brand identity statement, whatever, is I help musicians, authors, and creative entrepreneurs of all kinds make a living and make a difference in the world.
Cool.
So it's kind of a nice little, sentence there that sums up, and it also reminds me of what my mission is, although I pretty much know it to the core. But I think that's like probably at the core of what many people's goals are, to make a difference in other people's lives through the unique thing that we have to offer, right?
Well, that is universal.
Yeah.
The Iroquois Indians say that we have a benevolent desire of the soul. They have found that the shortest path to happiness is to do something nice for somebody else. We all have a core passion. When our core passion does something nice for somebody else, it makes us happy, inspires us, and ultimately provides us with the largest platform and the greatest income.
Why? Ooh, I like that. I have to quote you on that one. So yeah, you've been on a clip of like one book or so a year, and you got all these other things that you do. So how about future plans, Will? What's on the horizon? What can we expect from you in the coming months or this year?
I've actually begun a project. I don't have an official name for it. I'm using the name God's House right now. And what I discovered is that I am just a couple hundred miles away from the geographic center of the United States, which is Lebanon, Kansas.
Oh.
The geographic center of the lower 48. Thank you. You don't need to email me. I know. People are always correcting me on this. I get that. So I need to correct that. But right there at that geographic center is a very small roadside church. No electricity, nothing. But to me, it says that God is at the center of the United States. So what I'm doing is I've drawn a line 300 miles around there. And within that 300 miles are ashrams, there are temples, there are mosques. And what I'm doing is one by one, I'm visiting them and I am worshiping with them. And my friend John Gladman and I are making a movie about it. And we're also creating a coffee table book, which celebrates. We want to focus on the positive aspects of every religion.
Wow.
So that's what I'm working on.
That is way cool. I had no idea. So, Will, this has been amazing. But where can people find you online?
Will Bowen, go to willbowen.com or facebook.com/Will Bowen.
That's WILL and BOWEN, willbowen.com. And they can find all you mentioned like a URL for your new radio show or podcast. Can they find that on willbowen.com? Or is that
yes, they can. It's easiest to remember is willbowenradio.com. Will Bowen Radio, and I've got an interview with Maya Angelou coming up next week.
That's amazing. That's you're starting off with some pretty high-powered people. Yeah, she's amazing. Well, Will, thank you so much for your time. I knew this would be amazing. My expectations were high, and you just blew that out of the water. So this is fantastic. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and inspiration, and thanks for all the cool things that you do in the world to help people.
My pleasure, Bob. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thanks for watching or listening, however you're consuming this. And by the way, that object, if you're listening to the audio podcast, Will was holding up a pair of scissors earlier.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm being very aware.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but maybe in case you were wondering, what is that thing he's holding up? But thanks for watching and listening. I'll be back next week or so with another great interview. In the meantime, so long for now. Bye.